Sophie was born into a well-to-do family and was the only daughter of her parents. Her mother worked as a school principal, and her father was a dean at a university in the capital. Following in her mother's footsteps, she enrolled in a pedagogical university. Upon graduation, Sophie got a place as an elementary school teacher in one of the Parisian schools. She fully devoted herself to her profession, neglecting her personal life. Sophie was an ordinary, unremarkable young woman who was distinguished by blonde hair and blue eyes. She often wore pink to emphasize these features. In a short time, her parents began to show her a lot of attention, especially her mother. She often said, "Sophie, it's time for you to get married. You should think about starting a family. Your father and I want to take care of our future grandchildren." In response, Sophie would often remain silent, go for a walk, or sometimes seclude herself in her room, putting on headphones to immerse herself in music. One Friday, after school, Sophie came home tired. She took a shower, went to her room, and went to bed. The next morning, Sophie woke up to the sound of breaking dishes. She got up and decided to see what was going on. Soon the doorbell rang, and her parents went to greet the guests. As they moved into the living room, Sophie came out of her room. It was her parents' friends, the Leclerc family, who had come with their son Thierry. He stood with a bouquet of red roses for Sophie. Like a well-mannered girl, Sophie greeted the guests. She gave Thierry an appraising look. He was dressed in a black tuxedo with a red shirt and black tie. His dark hair was neatly styled. Smiling, Sophie said, "Thierry, you look very handsome. You must be a regular at the gym." The young man blushed, unable to find the right words, and simply held out the bouquet to her. Sophie took the flowers, kissed Thierry on the cheek, and said mockingly, "Thierry, I agree to be your wife. For your information, Aunt Lucy and Uncle Georges, I am as innocent as a tear. I've never had a man before." Sophie's parents blushed with embarrassment and gestured for her to stop talking nonsense. Georges and Lucy, realizing that Sophie was teasing them, were about to leave when Thierry said, "Mama, Papa, I like Sophie very much, and I want to marry her." "Sophie, I'm innocent too, so it's mutual," he joked with a smile. "That's good." "Future in-laws, let's sit at the table," Sophie's father said with a smirk. Sophie looked around and decided to sit next to Thierry. She raised her wine glass and stood up, saying loudly, "Dear parents, Thierry and I have decided to give you a gift. In order not to delay the grandchildren, we will play the wedding next week." The parents raised a toast to the young couple's health and began to discuss the wedding preparations. Sophie took a bottle of wine from the table and suggested that Thierry go for a walk in the park with her. Thierry looked at his parents, who were too engrossed in their conversation to notice, and said, "Mom, Dad, Sophie and I are going for a walk. Don't wait up for us. Sophie, take Thierry to your house." "His parents can spend the night with us," her father muttered, already quite tipsy. Thierry shrugged, grabbed a bottle of wine, and they headed outside. It was snowing. Sophie made a snowball and threw it at Thierry, who responded by pushing her into a snowdrift. He tripped and fell beside her. Laughing, Sophie teased him, "God sees everything, doesn't he?" They wandered leisurely through town and chatted. Sophie bragged about how talented her students were, and Thierry talked about his exciting work. Suddenly Thierry said, "Sophie, listen. We were talking so much that we didn't realize we were in front of my house." "Shall we have some tea?" suggested Thierry. "Yes, let's," Sophie replied. Thierry entered first and turned on the light. Once inside, Sophie froze with wonder. It felt like being in a museum. 18th century furniture, paintings by famous artists adorned the walls, and small sculptures stood everywhere. "Thierry, did you bring me to a museum?" Sophie asked quietly. "No, it's just our 5-room apartment," he replied. It turned out that they were soulmates who were destined to meet. That evening, they were overwhelmed by a storm of feelings, and 9 months later, an adorable little girl was born. Their parents' dreams of grandchildren came true, and Sophie and Thierry found the joy of married life.